Saturday, August 19th, 2017. This is Spingola Speaks, and this is Deanna Spingola, and I'm broadcasting from the Chicago suburbs. Thanks for joining me today on RBN. And, of course, their website is republicbroadcasting.org. To listen to the archives of this program, just select my name in the archives section at RBN. Please also visit and subscribe to SpingolaSpeaks.net. And please also visit the chat room at spingola.chatingo.com. You may view the guest lineup at spingola.com. Just click on the radio schedule button and select the year, month, and day. In addition to the links for each guest, I also have other interesting links relative to my remarks or to the guest and his or her subject. My guests today are Diane King and Jim and Joe Rizoli. The websites of interest are ccfile.com. In other words, it's CC File, but with two I's. And also jrizoli.wordpress.com. And Rizoli is spelled Ricoli. And I wanted to talk about Charlottesville a bit. And I can't help but thinking it's probably just a coincidence, but it seems very strange that it would happen within just a short period of time after the death of our wonderful friend, Ernst Sandel. And it seems to me that it also has the Soros signature on it. And he's famous for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we agree with that. Yeah.
Yep, he's famous for getting these things together, and he's got the big bucks to do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's got rabble-rousing, as I call them, brain-dead, mind-numbing, politically correct minions who will do his bidding without even thinking. They don't read. They're barely literate anyway, but they're always available to shout for the right price.
You're right. Absolutely. And that is definitely what's going on. And it's awful. I felt like flying my Confederate flag out in my front lawn because it just makes me sick that they are destroying. What they're destroying is the culture, and that is what the United States military does whenever it goes into a country and invades. The first thing they do is they take out the artifacts. They destroy museums. They destroy the culture. And that's what they're doing down there. Or what they're attempting to do is to destroy the culture. And when I think of, and I had ancestors that came from the South. And even if I didn't, I would still feel this way. But they are destroying a culture, a rich culture, and they are discrediting the South and its pleas for independence. And basically what they were just simply a colony of the North. The North exploited them economically and in every way that one could imagine. And it just makes me very, very upset.
Right.
It should.
Yeah, well, we've been having some exciting things happen up here relating to that Charlottesville because today they had a rally on Boston Common. All right, so this is just kind of like a continuation of what happened in Charlottesville. And I was going to go down to the Common to go there to, either video it or, get involved with it in some way because it's supposed to be a free speech rally. But the problem is it really isn't a free speech rally because the young kids, 23-year-old kids that got this thing together, they're for free speech, but they're not for my free speech. They're for their free speech because the topics I want to talk about, they banned. You can't talk about them. So that we were watching it. In fact, we put the video up on our YouTube site. What happened? Video live. We actually did a Facebook live of it with it in the background on the TV. Kind of interesting. Worked out pretty well, actually. But you had to see this to believe it because the Boston Common is a pretty big place, and it has a rotunda where you go in. It's all enclosed. It's probably about 30 feet round, or thereabouts, and you walk upstairs, you go in it. But that's in the middle of Boston Common, on one side of it anyway. And all the people that were for free speech was inside of that rotunda. Now, normally, when you're giving a talk about free speech, or you have an opinion that you want to give there, you think there would be all these people in front of you to listen. Well, there's only one problem. When you look at the video, there was nobody. The cops cordoned off at least 100 feet in front of that, so that nobody could even be in front of it to listen to anything. And even if they were, they wouldn't have heard anything because these people didn't have a PA system.
Yeah, they didn't have enough money to buy.
Yeah, they said they didn't have enough money for the PA system. So, obviously, this whole event was a scam. It was set up by, I believe, Jewish instigators who just made the event so they could be there to have their free speech and pull in all their people, all their loony, liberal nut jobs, I call them, from all over Massachusetts or all over whatever, and they all came in to have their rally, and they didn't have to pay for a permit. So they're kind of living off the permit. All these people that attended that rally, which most of them were liberals, they attended the rally based on living off the permit of these young people that took it out, but it had nothing to do with the topic. It had to do with, I think they just got it done so they wouldn't have to spend a lot of money, because it's costing, I heard, the city of Boston $250,000 to $300,000 at this point anyway, to put that rally on because of all the police and everything involved. And so there was a huge contingent of people walking up from Dorchester, suburbs of Boston, up the street, thousands and thousands of them. They think there was 20 or 30,000 people here. But there was hardly any people representing the real patriots of this country and the real free speech advocates. It was a rally that was representing everybody else but
us. And what they would do, if somebody would emerge or surface that, let's say this one gentleman, like our age, had a T-shirt on "No White Genocide," they just set it on him like he was the plague. The anti-fascist, the Black Lives Matter. I mean, they began to like buzzing type of energy. I mean, the police were over there. What did the police do? Instead of surrounding him so he could have his say, they escorted him away from the area.
Manson had a speech rally, a free speech rally, and anyone that had a Trump shirt on, or if you had a Confederate flag shirt, which I really doubt if anybody had one on.
Nobody got through with that one on.
They would, if they saw that you were the opposition, which really that was the whole reason for this, so that you could have your free speech, they escorted you off with a group of policemen off Boston Common so that these people couldn't confront you. So what a joke this was. This was an absolute joke.
I mean, I call it a pseudo-free speech, merely a rally. Two purposes. Originally, I thought it was to flush out white nationalists. That is a term I guess use people like us who have a conservative point of view, and we're all lumped into the same group anyway, and then be able to take pictures and so on, and then harass us after the fact. But what happened was we all stayed away except for a few, and once they were spotted, they were ferreted out and spirited off. And so what it became was merely a mass gathering, a mob, of oppressive mob to intimidate us.
All the alt-left.
All the alt-left. There was, like Jim said, and of course they interviewed. The more outrageous the sign, the media descended upon them to interview them.
Yeah. And if you had an American flag, they escorted you off the common. Can you imagine?
Oh, my goodness.
And also the people the Antifa, who are not in Canada, it's illegal to wear masks and handkerchiefs around your face, particularly in dealing with the police. You could spot them because they had their scarves, they had their masks on, and I was told, because I was in a discussion on this one TV station, well, that's to protect themselves. I said, they're the ones throwing the urine and the acid on people. Protect them against what?
Right.
Oh,
they're not being attacked. So it's a perverted version. We never use the term free speech, particularly if it's coming on let's say TV or mainstream media, they are not going to be free. It's the opposite of it. Or it's exclusive and selective free speech, but doesn't include us. Believe me, it will not include us. In fact, we will be shut down. When people were responding to me on this discussion in regard to this TV station, and I expressed these very same things, they said to me, "You are the stupidest person." I said, "Well, thank you for honoring my free speech for the first thing. Second, you are truly a product of the public school. And third, pick up a book and get informed."
You're so right. This is just amazing. But when you look at it across the board, when you think of the censorship that has recently been employed at Google, and of course you have to include YouTube and across the internet, there has been censorship back as far as 2008 when the ADL got together with YouTube, I believe it was YouTube, and said, we will help you with taking care of censoring things that should not be heard, should not be seen.
In the Boston Globe a couple of days ago, when they were talking about this event, they had the name of the person who was involved. Well, first of all, the name of the article was called "Who is Behind Free?" The thing just disappeared. Okay. Who is behind Free Speech Coalition? Who is behind, that's English, huh? Who is behind Free Speech Coalition? And the person's name is John Medla. And I'm saying to myself, okay, who is this guy? I mean, who is he? I mean, has he had prior meetings, even though I think he has? I've never heard of him. He's never been in the media. All of a sudden, a guy comes on the scene and says, I'm going to have a rally at the Common. Now, what's interesting about that is he puts stipulations. He says the group describes itself on Facebook as a coalition of libertarians, progressive, conservatives, and independents that is willing to peacefully engage in open dialogue about the threats to the importance of free speech and civil liberties. And then he says they're in their 20s from these towns, Newton, Cambridge, and Charlestown. Now, Newton is just a Jewish town. So I'm saying to myself, I think this guy is Jewish. And he said, let's see. So anyway, he says that they're libertarians and progressives. Now, when we hear the word progressive, the first thing I think is Jewish. Because they're the ones who are trying to change everything. They're the ones that are progressive. Now, let's get back to this meeting on the Common. Here they are, 100 feet all around them. Nobody's there. See, we've been to this place. We've been to rallies, and people who have had the rallies have had PA systems. And we sit in front or all around it, or basically in front, because that's what the PA system is. And we listen to the rally talks. They had no PA system. They're in the center of this place, inside of it. They're not doing anything. They're not saying anything. Now, conversely, after it ends, don't you think the media would be all following them and chasing them and trying to interview them? I haven't seen one single thing in the news about interviewing them. Nothing. So,
right, but you forgot to mention that one of the things he said they're not going to talk about.
Oh, yeah, I think I might have.
He said is Holocaust denial.
In fact, we were uninvited. No Holocaust deniers welcome.
No.
We were uninvited to this. I read that. I thought, well, there goes the free speech aspect of it.
Oh, here it is here. Oh, I got it right here. Here's what it says in the article. It says, we do not, because they're talking about this other guy they were going to invite. I guess they didn't invite him. It says, we do not support him due to his willingness to support violence, as well as his Holocaust denial, said one member who would only identify himself as Lewis. So this guy, distinctively, whatever his name was, he pulled out of the rally. So imagine Holocaust. Now, my point is, what's that Holocaust denial have to do with anything if you're talking about free speech or talking about illegal immigration or this or that? These people talked about nothing. I have no idea what they talked about. I mean, even if we went there, the Rizolis went there, we'd say, well, we'd like to go there and talk about illegal immigration. Well, remember, they're libertarians and progressive. They're not going to agree with us about anything. So what is the free speech? So we think the whole thing was a setup.
It's a scam, yeah.
It was a scam, a setup to get the people from Boston to rally with their lesbians and their transgenders and all these people. Well, Black Lives Matter.
All the religions who talk about nothing except, hate.
Yeah, all the and the Jews. You could see all these signs that had Jewish symbols on them and, whatever. And we think that they got them together. They knew they were going to march into Boston. And it was just a setup to actually probably try the police out to see what they could do to manipulate the people. Now, you also got to remember, they had no food trucks. These people walking for 2 hours. These people, they're walking for 2 hours, and they have no food, no water, nothing. They could have brought all the food trucks in there and
lined up the whole street.
All the street, because there's no cars.
But see, they didn't want anything on the street.
Right, they didn't want anything on the street. So, of course, what's happening in Boston now, we don't know, because, the blacks now are in there, and they're probably getting in the fights with people. And, of course, if they break windows or if they do anything like that, they'll be able to blame slavery, or they'll be able to, blame, the guys that were, the molecules that were left behind
2 hours before.
2 hours ago by these guys that were on the platform. Yeah. So, it just seems to me like it was the biggest fake news scam that ever happened.
And the websites of interest are ccfiile.com and jrizoli.wordpress.com. And I am, as many of you are, I am on the CAFR, Walter Burrian's CAFR email list. And he said this morning, please, I repeat, please do not use the $1, $20, $50, or the $100 bills, as they all have pictures of former slave owners on them. Send them all to me, and I will dispose of them properly. Do not just throw them away. They need to be disposed of properly, and I am a certified money disposer. Mail them immediately to me. Rest assured, I will dispose of them properly and get rid of the dirty, racist money in a proper fashion. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, what's the address so I can send my money to?
I got a few hundred.
Far be it for me to support slavery.
It is getting to be that ridiculous, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then,
Deanna, did you know that there's 3 statues of Lenin in the United States, and nothing's happening to them? No one's complaining about taking those down.
And I was also thinking, look at the statues of Truman, and look what he did to Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Clinton. Clinton's in those crosshairs right now, some of the groups. His
yes.
statue, I said, don't, just take it down. We'll deal with it later.
And some of her money, I understand, is behind this.
She and Obama have their tentacles in these movements and the dissatisfaction generated and stirred up in this country against Trump.
Sure. And that is also what this is all about. And, of course, the media. You do not hear anything good on the media about this. The other thing, or about him, the other thing that is very interesting is that what he said about this situation, I think, merits attention, because he said that there was evil on both sides. And, in fact, Michael Hoffman, who doesn't praise Trump, but he said that I want to praise our president for 2 things he did in his impromptu news conference yesterday. These are 2 things that every magistrate ought to be able to do, and which precious few of them today are even willing to think about. Trump refused to be steered by mob action, and when 2 evil groups clashed violently, he refused to take sides. I disagree with 2 evil groups, but he refused to take sides. He stated his case inelegantly, but he was clear on the essentials, and I was very gratified by his refusal to budge.
Absolutely.
Which is good. And of course he got he got bombarded about it, saying, the media really is very negative towards him.
He did the right thing.
Yes.
When the media is up in arms, he did the right thing.
Yes.
When the liberals are pulling their hair out because of it, he did the right thing.
Yes, I agree.
Well, if those nutty people didn't come against, it doesn't matter if they were Ku Klux Klan, white supremacists. I don't care who they are. If they just left them alone, there would have been nothing would have happened. See, this is what people don't understand. In other words, this is something about the Jews that I find happen all the time. They can't leave anything alone. In other words, if there's a smack of anti-Semitism or something, they can't just forget about it. They have to come at it. And it doesn't matter what happens because they believe in the Samson, principle. Knock down the whole temple. We'll kill ourselves if we have to make a point. And that's what they do. So what happened at this rally, if they just technically if they did what they did in Boston with this rally, nobody would have been near those persons.
Well, but I must admit, Boston did keep everybody away, but they kept everybody away who were the free speech advocates that wanted to hear something from the speakers.
Right.
Because there was no speakers, and there was nothing said.
They threw the baby out.
CC file to eisenfile.com and jrizoli.wordpress.com. RizoliTV.com. Okay. Thank you. I'm so glad that you were there, that we have somebody that was actually on the ground and seeing what was going on. And
well, actually, we weren't there. We watched it on the TV,
and then we
talked about it. Because if we went there, we would have been kicked out of there. So that's why we really couldn't take a chance of being there. But we watched the whole thing. I recorded it on TV, and I could see everything that was going on. So I had the best seat in the house, to be honest with you.
Sure. Well, I watched it on TV also, and all I saw was, it was just an awful lot of bashing on both sides. It was horrible. It was horrible to watch.
You're talking about Charlottesville?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Boston one.
We're no both sides in Boston.
Yeah. No, okay, I see what you're saying. So you watched the Charlottesville one. Okay.
Yes.
I never saw that on TV except the clips after.
Yeah.
Well, I think that seeing this on television makes the audience, whether you're watching, whatever you're watching that is chaotic, it gives the viewers a sense of discomfort to think that the community is so violent that you're afraid to venture out. And I think that is very deliberate. And I think that the media plays upon that. And certainly in the Chicago area, we see this all the time. We hear about all the people that are killed on the highways from random shooting. Every day there's somebody murdered, particularly during the weekends in Chicago. And it just gives the community a general sense of fear. And I think it's very deliberate. And I think that the authorities allow this in order to later bring in more military in order to control not the people who are doing this, but to control the entire community.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Everything that's happening right now with the police are just what do you call it? Tactical exchanges. They're trying to get experience with all these things happening around them, and they're using us as the guinea pigs.
Yeah, well, they did that some years ago when we were holding an immigrant. No, we weren't holding a meeting, but we went to a meeting at the town hall. There was a white supremacist group that was going to be there. Oh, of course, they made a big thing about it. So what they did was they cordoned off the whole building. In other words, you couldn't park around the building. And then when you came in, you had to have stuff looked at by the police. So in other words, this is a whole test ground for them to practice, their little, workings. I went in there with a video camera. He opened it up, took the tape out, saw what was it. It was just so stupid. because we had two white supremacist guys sitting in the front row at this meeting.
Yeah, they made a big thing about two guys.
Yeah, and it was just a practice for them to, get used to, okay, we may have to do this sometime in the future. Big deal. It was so stupid.
Sure. The other thing that I was thinking about, too, is that we have to look behind the curtain, as the three of you do, and you do it very well. You have to look behind the curtain and see, well, they're talking about slavery and how terrible it was. Of course it's terrible. But look who started it. Look who owned the majority of the slaves in the South. It wasn't your common Southern farmer. And if it was, if a farmer did happen to have a slave, the farmer worked right alongside the slave, and they were more like family than anything else. It's the big plantation owners, many of which came down from the North, that came down and treated the slaves like slaves, and you have to look at who owned them and who brought them over, who built the ships that brought them over, who ran the slave markets, and it's always the same people.
Yeah, you never ever hear that mentioned in any discussion group.
Well, actually, slavery obviously, came from Africans who, for hundreds and thousands of years, were enslaving their own blacks.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, the Muslims come involved and knows, hey, we could have the slaves too, and they took part of it, the Jews took part of it. So before it came to the United States, the blacks are already doing it to the blacks for hundreds and hundreds of years. Well, so I don't know what this was about.
The Muslims actually, in Europe, not Europe, that Saudi Arabia area anyway, the Muslims ran a huge slave trade there. Right. And, you don't see the Jews speaking out against them, and saying, wow, you had a big slave trade and you were doing this and doing that. It's almost like, oh, that's all forgotten.
Yeah, well, they don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, right.
Sure. And we also need to remember that the North, there were people in the North who had slaves also. And the emancipation did not include the slave owners in the North.
Right.
They didn't have to give up their slaves and didn't give up their slaves. And it started up north, okay?
Yeah, right. And no one mentions, of course, the blacks that own slaves either. The blacks own their own black slaves.
The first guy that sued in 16-something was a free black, and he sued because he got his slaves back or something. 16-something.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I will say something on behalf of slavery that was terrific, is that we got to build Angola prison as a result of these slaves being dismissed from their masters. So I thought that was pretty good. They had nothing to do, and they had no work, and they had no place to go, and so they started, killing, raping, rampaging, and they said, hey, let's build a prison.
Yeah, that's right. Angola
so that's what they did.
Labor.
Right.
A lot of these slaves were so good off, they didn't want to leave.
Right.
Well, they were given,
you could be a slave to the corporation, and even early on, if you worked for a corporation, say in New York, if you were in the manufacturing business in New York and you had a bunch of people working for you, if one of them accidentally cut off their arm, they would be out on the street because they would lose their rat-infested tenement where they lived, and they would be out on the street. But the slaves in the South, when they got too old to work, they still had their cabin, they still had their garden. They weren't out on the street. They weren't just dismissed. So I think that when you look at it, we're all enslaved to some point or another.
Right. Well, if there's Jews involved.
Oh, absolutely. That's the middle name. Enslave the boy. The thing is that there is a tendency, the Fed has always made it a point to kind of train the blacks at least for a plantation mentality, that we will take care of you. In fact, when a lot of these women have had 10, 20 kids, and I do not exaggerate, they say the government needs to take care of us. So there is that mindset. And so essentially when the And unfortunately for them, the Fed right now is kind of hostile, if you will, toward their way of life, like they want them to go out and work and all that horrible stuff. But eventually there'll be another Democrat that comes in, and that will be typically a plantation owner type of mentality. And they'll have their welfare checks and so on. And so there isn't that, we got to stop this. This is ridiculous. Now, some people will say that. I think Bill Cosby said that. He got in a lot of trouble saying that type of thing, taking responsibility for
look what happened to him. Look what happened to him. If you have a decent black person who promotes independence, self-reliance, and demotes this idea that people are entitled to live off of other people, then they are going to be taken out in some way or another. And I really question whether all of these lawsuits against him are legitimate or whether it's just to take him down. I think it's something we should question. So they need some good spokespeople. But of course, if you do have a good spokesperson, no matter who it is, and they're victimized or otherwise taken out, it's going to really limit the number of people who are going to want to step forward.
Deterrent. It's meant as a aversion therapy. Don't stick your head out too far. Don't be too righteous. Literally, not the correct righteousness, not the pseudo-righteousness that the Antifa and the left are doing. So that's self-righteous. I mean, true righteous when you're striving to do best and better. I mean, you're going to get shut down. They can't have that. That's going to strengthen a society, and we're in the process of dismantling the society.
Sure. Which brings us to the subject of Ernst Zundel. Now, after what happened to him, are there going to be a lot of Germans or any Germans at all who are going to step forward and try to do what he did?
I don't.
They're all in jail.
Yeah, they're all in jail.
People who are German should. We were within one. This is what I was told already. We were within one vote of making America the German language.
Yep.
One vote. So people don't understand that with the heritage, with the Germans in this country, and because of the Jews messing everything up and fighting against Germany and this and that, they just everything went topsy-turvy,
Well, half the population of the United States in the 1850s, or up until that time, was German.
Right. They were the farmers. They were the big people doing all that. Doing all the work.
Sure. The early Germans that came over were hardworking people. They wanted to contribute. They wanted to give back. They were ready. They were willing and ready to work. And then you had a second big rush of Germans that came in, but they weren't really Germans, they were Marxist. And they came in as a result of the failure of the 1848 Marxist revolutions in Europe. They came over here and fought on the North in the so-called Civil War, the War of Northern Aggression. And so you had two different mindsets there. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, people don't get it how bad it got when the Marxists came in.
Yes.
That's when Darwin and all that started happening, too. The evolution,
sure.
All that came in. And everything to get people away from a spiritual, side of things. Not to say that religion is doing a good job in doing things, but it sent them off the cliff in the other direction when the Darwin people came in. And the evolutionists came in, and all those Marxists came in.
And this was compounded right when Hitler came to power, and all of their Jews and the Frankfurt School and the reprobate actors and actresses left Germany, and guess where they came?
Yeah, they went straight to Hollywood and set up the studios.
Columbia University for the Frankfurt School, and they began infiltrating the colleges. And this is during the Depression. How is it possible to get a high-end job as an immigrant coming into a country during the Great Depression?
Well, you just go to work for the State Department.
Well, they had a place already. The Jews had brought them into this country, into Columbia University, and then the rest of your Ivy League eventually. And so now our schools are worthless.
Yes.
Right.
Well, you mentioned earlier about Christians, and in addition to the other things that Michael Hoffman mentioned, he said that the Christians were really well-intentioned, but he said that they were the ones that were scrambling to denounce the Confederate flag. And
Right.
when you denounce one flag, then pretty soon you're going to start denouncing other flags.
Right. And everything else. That's exactly right.
Now you brought up Antifa.
Yep.
Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
My first experience with them was in Canada. They are, like here, they're not original. And they would provide counter-protests, like we would be protesting outside of Erzundel prison, the West detention in Toronto, and they would be there too. And the police would have to be there, but the police would have to have guards over their horses' eyes because the Antifa would attempt to poke out the eyes of the horses.
Oh my gosh!
The police knew they knew how, and they knew they wouldn't get that from us because they were largely survivor Germans there and free speech people that were involved in this, and they're a huge outpouring from us, but also from them. And so the police kept them on the other side. But their philosophy, and it was encouraged and fueled by this person named Richard Warman, who was a classic, as Paul Fromm called him, classic complainer, and he made a living of taking Canadians to court for their expression of their nonviolent opinion. But they don't have free speech in Canada unless the government says you deserve it. So these Antifa would be across the street with their masks on, which is against the law in Canada, but they would not prosecute them, which is a real Soviet tactic, is you allow the criminals to run free and keep the dissidents in the house. And then so we would picket and protest and just stay kind of very alert with them over there. And again, the police would separate us, which is what they would do, and unlike what they did not do in Charlottesville. And so that was my first experience, but their idea is based on this Richard Warman, maximum destruction. Now, when I was with Paul, his house got picketed. One of the tactics that they use is they will leaflet your neighborhood about a racist, white supremacist, all the classic epithets, neo-Nazi. They picketed, and the police would not allow them into the complex, so they went to the strip mall behind the house. And they were brought in by a school bus. Well, none of them had any money, so we knew that they were financed by Richard Warman, which they were because they said, thank you, Richard Warman, for making it possible for us to be here. They'd actually have signs that said that. And so the neighbors, we couldn't go. I mean, there probably were 3 or 4 dozen neighbors. And, of course, what it does is terrorizes, and it causes them to attempt to alienate themselves from us. And so, yeah, that was an experience.
Oh, sure.
Also, firsthand. And that was their tactic. And maximum destruction, whatever it takes. And they are not limited by the law.
ccfile.com, and file has 2 I's, and also jrizoli.wordpress.com and rizolitv.com. Diane, you sent out an email on the 18th, and you said at the top of the email, constitutionalist equals, gun rights supporter equals, voted for Ron Paul / Trump equals, white nationalist equals, white supremacist equals, neo-Nazi equals, racist equals, extreme right equals, homegrown terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, welcome to the club, Deanna.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm in good company, aren't I?
Well, the thing is, people say, and I address this, they say, oh, well, I don't believe this or that. I said, it won't matter. We've already been lumped into the same group. They will treat us all the same. And once they can do that, and once we've been redefined, and this is going on, you can see it various places on the Internet, they're trying to get the people that believe the way we do, instead of saying we're constitutionalists and or libertarian or whatever, it makes that digression, as you saw, until finally we have to be lumped into the same group as a terrorist. Once we are, then we become under a different law. We lose our rights. We become tried into the, thanks to George Bush, military tribunals. And, we don't have to go to Guantanamo. We've got enough FEMA camps in this country to house all of us. But then we become a whole different class, and then they can start coming after us in total. And any one of the, and I forgot to put anti-Semite in there, I think that can be implied by the neo-Nazi, presumably, is any time any one of those begins to become successful, it will be like a wormhole that will pull all the rest of it and us into it. And you cannot say, you can backpedal all you want in the roundup. Yes, I'm white. Yes, I'm Christian. Oh, that's another group. Yes, I voted for Trump. But I don't believe this way. They will have stopped listening when they say, you're white. That will probably be the first thing. The second thing is, of course, voter registration and so on. But they're having a trouble navigating through this mire and getting us affected. That's why they need to create these sensational crises type things, because then people don't think about it. They just associate the terms. And then when the rest of us, and a number of us did not go to these demonstrations, we cringe because we see how the words are being thrown around. If someone does dare to cross the line and actually be there like that guy that had no white genocide, then they become a focus. And then all of a sudden they include all the other terms, white, and anytime you're afraid of white genocide, they include those people in the group too. We are all in it. Get used to it.
Right. Now, when I saw this on TV, the big thing that they were promoting here in this area was neo-Nazi. That's all, neo-Nazi, neo-Nazi. They just kept repeating that. They just, and of course that is the number one thing that no one wants to be called. The websites of interest are ccfile, 2 I's in file, ccfile.com and jrizoli.wordpress.com and rizolitv.com. Diane, could you elaborate on some of the other things that you included in that email? Because I think it's very important. You mentioned that the establishment's new public enemy, number one, is the straight white Christian men. So apparently, if you haven't gone over to Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria and gotten yourself killed or maimed or on psych drugs, then I guess that they're going to do away with the rest of the people by simply declaring them as the new public enemy.
I was just going to say, isn't that a reference to what someone on CNN had said?
Yes. Gate of Liberty said that, and also CNN said it. Chris Como.
Right, exactly. Considering the source, CNN is,
yes,
we probably
it
talked
is.
about them.
Yes.
Right.
Well, you can include the entire media because everything is owned, and we can thank Ronald Reagan for that. When he came into office, there were something like 87 different media entities, and now it's pretty much down to 5. Thank you, Ronald Reagan.
Interesting. Thank you for presenting that, because we have as have I, a kind of a romantic view of certain aspects of our history and politicians, and that we don't accept. We say, oh, Ronald Reagan, those are the good years and such. But I was just a kid. And so, absolutely, once you understand more of what's happening, none of these politicians, Donald Trump is not a politician, but he's been forced into the mold, and he's doing some seriously erroneous things, like in the Middle East. But I think he's trying to do the right thing, and so he needs to be supported, but they should never be held on a pedestal. And once we understand what they're about, as you have, and particularly in my case, George Bush, then we realize that they're sellouts. All they care about themselves. There's no such thing as a good politician, and we're really sunk. My dad used to say I don't think he remembered it at this time. There was a time, I think, when he wasn't voting. He said, I'd vote if I didn't have to vote for a politician.
That's clever.
And, How did that work? Okay. So, in regard, and there are 2 other articles there. If anyone is to wonder, now a lot of this stuff they throw out as a testing ground. How are people going to respond to this? I think there's a lot of denial on our side. Oh, it couldn't possibly be. It couldn't possibly get that bad. They wouldn't let that happen to us. Oh, really? And what are exactly the breaks and barriers that would keep them from disenfranchising and eventually eliminating us? Particularly if the white man has been deemed by the Jews as the bane of their existence, well, they're going to do everything they can to get rid of us, because if there is, like in Germany and also in the U.S. at the time, a strong homogeneous population, you're going to have a strong identity. If you can't go after the identity, you go after the culture that creates the identity. You have a strong solidarity. You break up the solidarity by infusing a third world population, intermarrying and all that. Game over. You do not have a country that has its loyalties. It's so split and divided, you now have a slavishly working force that doesn't know who they are. They either are collecting welfare on the government dole, and the other 10% are working their brains out to try to make a living. Perfect environment for a parasite.
Sure. And multiculturalism, you have to look and see who's behind the curtain with that one. And they readily admit it, that they're behind multiculturalism and the reason for it. And it's very interesting that while they want the rest of humanity to intermarry and to mix, they certainly keep themselves isolated from doing the same thing that they promote in others.
Absolutely. Interestingly, though, Israel, I think Hitler had forecasted this. They will have their own homeland. It will be called Israel, and they won't be able to. They can't stand living together and won't be able to wait till you get out. They won't stay there because Jews don't like living with other Jews. They are not happy unless they're dominating and creating havoc in the host population. And if they're the host population, well, what are you going to do?
I don't remember where I read this, but just this past week, I read something to the effect that both Chelsea Clinton and Trump's daughter, I always get them, Ivanka, were both targeted by Jewish men long ago as a kind of a setup. So that, have you heard anything like that?
Well, no, I don't doubt that at all.
You can see it.
I mean, it is a coincidence, isn't it? I mean, really? I think Chelsea, the fellow that he's big bucks. I mean, he's worth a lot of money, right?
Well, so is
Kirshner.
Oh, no, I know. Kirshner is too. I mean, I don't know if Kirshner is worth more money than Donald. I don't know. But there's a lot of money there.
Kirshner's father made a lot of money in building in Israel. He built a lot of the homes there.
Yeah, okay.
In the wrong place, of course. Took over Palestine.
Right.
In the settlements. He built a lot of the homes in the settlements.
Yeah.
So you just have to wonder. And the position that Kushner has with Trump is very scary.
It is. He's kind of the inroad, the foot in the door that allows the rest of them in. And in regard to various declarations our president has made, I really get the feeling at this point it was a gun to his head type of thing.
Yes, you do have to wonder that. And of course, I did some programs back in November, right after the so-called election, because certainly who decided who the voters were going to vote for to begin with? We didn't really do that. They said, okay, you can either have this one or that one. Well, okay, between this evil or that evil, I don't know which one. And, but I did some programs and I listed some of the people that, Trump was associated with, some of the teams that he had working with him. It was pretty awful. Yes, and I always said that you cannot do business in Manhattan unless you have an in with the Jews, because they pretty much own Manhattan. Well, they pretty much own a lot of things.
The thing is, I think Trump makes a distinction between his business practices in New York and being president, running the country. I somewhat doubt, this may be naive, and of course we'll see, that he thought that he might be able to act independently from them because this is a different venue. This isn't business precisely like it is in New York. It is more politics running the country and management in this regard. I think he may have naively thought he could do so without their interference. Sure.
Now, the other thing, too, is that with the media, the entire media, whether you're thinking liberal or alternative, the entire media is against him.
Right. Yes.
That says something. If the media is against you, you must be doing something right.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know how it is where you live. You live in Chicago?
I live in the suburbs.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're here, okay, when you turn on the TV, and especially if you get on Channel 2, which is like WGBH, PBS, and they have all the time. I watch their news only because I want to torture myself. But
right.
Anyway, it is so incredible. Every single person and article that they talk about is against Trump. I mean,
yes.
Nothing ever is on anybody's on his side at all. Bash, bash, bash. That's all the media does in Massachusetts. All the politicians, even the Republicans. It doesn't matter. They bash him too. Everybody bashes. My God, I've never seen so much disrespect for a president as I have seen for Trump.
Yes, that's the same way it is here. And you have to ask yourself, why is that?
Right.
What is he doing or not doing that the Jewish media doesn't like?
Well,
and the politicians too. The mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, has nothing but hate for him.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's mutual.
Yeah.
I can't stand him. Good news, bad news about him leaving Washington is that's the good news. Bad news is he ended up in Chicago. Bad news for you.
Yeah, right.
So, but the thing is, you didn't know that policy that Obama had that caused, there's a name for it, that caused banks and financial institutions to refuse helping certain organizations because the administration at that time didn't like their political stand, which mainly was targeting conservative groups. Trump repealed. He completely reversed that, so that but you don't hear that, do you?
No.
So I'm up in Massachusetts. I don't hear it either. I saw that. I had to read that online. We're lucky to get the real news, if you will, on the Internet. There are certain sites that are watchdogs. Those are the sites that will provide, it's already been filtered through the fake news filter. And so they're probably, this is where I got one. I think it might have been, it wasn't young conservatives, I believe was one of them. Not young Republicans, because I'm a bit dubious about the party thing, but young conservatives and people who are a bit, on the radical side. Those you can trust the news sources, I think.
Well, if they haven't been hijacked.
Hijacked, yeah.
Sure.
You know that. I mean, if they're favorable toward the Jews, and most of them are, then it's grain of salt and I start looking elsewhere.
Sure. Well, when Rahm Emanuel came back to Chicago, he had given up his residency here and rented his home. And so when he came back, he really did not have, he was not qualified to run for mayor. And there was a gentleman that I had on my program, Jeff Joe Black. And I also had John Cass on with Jeff Joe Black at one point. And they said, yes, Rahm Emanuel was not qualified to run as mayor. And so Jeff Joe Black was the main activist and got Rahm Emanuel into court. And then his renters came in and said, no, he rented us a place and we've been in it and there's nothing here that belongs to him. Well, the next day, the renters came back and said, Oh, we went down in the basement, and my goodness, we found a whole bunch of boxes that belonged to Rahm Emanuel. So he didn't give up his residency. And within 2 months of the court case, maybe 3 months, Jeff Joe Black, well, first of all, he was a white-collar worker, and he lost his job. He became homeless, literally homeless. No place to live, nothing. And so his mother lived in Pennsylvania, and he decided to leave town in a hurry because I think he felt like it was in his best interest to leave town. And within 2 weeks after he arrived in Pennsylvania, somebody threw him over an overpass right into the trail of a truck, or right into the path of a oncoming semi.
That must have been just a coincidence.
Yeah, I'm sure it was one of those coincidences that we hear about all the time.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it happens. Yeah, it's just one of those little freak things.
Like Sonny Bono. Remember the coincidence? Yeah. Yeah. All kinds of incidences where people shoot themselves twice in the head or whatever.
Right. I know. I go figure. But, oh, well, that's what they say. It must be true.
Yeah, we heard it on the news. It's true.
Getting back to that point about everybody hating Trump, again, he came against the media, and that's why everybody hates Trump, because the media is, making him look bad every which way.
Oh,
and,
sure.
Horrible. I mean, it's getting worse.
All right. Hi, everyone. Rizoli here.
Sorry, I know.
How'd you get that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. That's our Jim and Joe's Facebook Live.
Yeah, we did a Facebook Live today. That was kind of interesting.
Trying to tag Tom Robb, which is my friend from Arkansas, and I was just talking, and so I just wanted to let him see that.
But he was supposed to be up here for the rally.
I don't think he was coming. He was I think he might have been at Charlottesville. He in a kind of a perhaps crass way. That's not what they're called, but he tongue in cheek calls himself the Ku Klux Klan Church in Harrison, Arkansas, and it's only partially tongue in cheek. They're very conservative. They have their own property. They have a great impact on their town. It's 95% white, and he's not shy. He's been involved in political action for decades. And I got to know him. I've also spoken at his meetings down there, a family something or other, and met his family. And it's been real interesting. Anyway, he's on Facebook. And he was asking, or I asked him if he had anybody at this meeting. He said there were some in Charlottesville. He didn't think there were any in Boston, though. And so I thought, that's his right to practice the way he wants to, his political action. And so he doesn't oppose, Jesus himself said that they're not against you, they're for you. So, Pastor Rob is not against, our Holocaust, quote unquote, Holocaust denial or any of that. In fact, I think he subscribes to it. So anyway, I apologize. That's a little bit of history that I know all sorts of people. Now, frankly, I probably know some neo-Nazis. Actually, there is this one gentleman who declares himself, but not neo, an actual National Socialist. He got in trouble in Canada because of it, and he lost his job and all. But as far as neo-Nazis, I'm not sure that actually exists.
I don't think it does.
I really don't either. I think that's another one of those terms, like Nazi was a allied term. They never use it themselves. Neo-Nazis do not apply that to, not true ones, apply it to themselves, and they don't make it an in-your-face issue. Just like my friend didn't, his National Socialism. If he were asked, he would talk about it, but he did not walk around with armbands and flags and so on. And Terry, a very respectful, very honorable guy, was attempted to be driven by the same Richard Warman I told you about to suicide. That was Richard. Terry almost did it, but then he backed up and said, "Okay, that's enough of this." And so he was able to kind of rescue himself in that regard. But anyway, so I know a number of people, and so you know what? Because in Canada, association will get you convicted of the crime. Right. You happen to know somebody. I know the Rizolis. That makes me whatever they are. Actually, I'm probably more than what they are.
Right.
You know, if they're neo-Nazi, I'm the real thing.
All right.
I'm a card carrier, according to the politically correct, in other words, because of the videos I put up. So,
I just want to compliment the three of you for all of your activity and all of the things that you're doing to spread the word, to tell the truth, to talk about what you talk about. I'm just so impressed with the three of you. I think you're wonderful.
We're still living right now, but I'm telling you, the noose is tightening up here.
That's right.
I can feel it.
Right.
I mean, why don't you tell her? I don't know if you know. Well, you got a commercial. We'll get
Okay.
We'll get back.
This is Deanna, and during the break, I was thinking about something that I've talked about a lot. Is orchestrated opposition. Now, perhaps the objective of media Trump bashing might be to gain empathy for those of us who looked at him immediately and said, no, he really is with the Jews. I mean, he put on his yarmulke and he went to the wall and did all of those things, and he claims that Israel is a really good friend. They're still bombing in Syria. They still have plans for further warfare in the Middle East. The troops are still there. They haven't been recalled. Is it orchestrated opposition to say, well, if the media hates him, then he must be doing something right? Or, what do you think?
I look at Trump as now he has his politician hat on, and he's trying to make everybody happy, all right? Because he's looking to run in 220, I would imagine, and he has to try to make everybody happy. But the problem is that's not going to happen, all right? Because you can't make everybody happy without hurting somebody else. And
sure.
I don't really think he understands how bad the situation is making friends with Jews. I mean, it might be good politically for him, but I think morally and ethically, I think he's going down the wrong road there. I would like to think he's going to take the high road, but I don't think he can do it because the fact that they will kill him. I mean, that's my opinion. If he doesn't continue to play ball with them, and since he has everybody that hates him, if he got assassinated today, people would probably have parties. Okay? They'd be dancing in the street. So, I don't know. He's really in between a rock and a hard place.
I'm not sure whether it's a book I was reading this week but I think that he should give every member of Congress, it's probably I read several books at one time. Sometimes I don't remember what I got out of which book, but I think if he gave every member of Congress, all 535 people, a blanket so that they wouldn't be guilty of anything, wipe the slate clean, tell them, okay, if you want to be with AIPAC, then, or if you're with Israel, then get out of Congress. I think that's what he needs to do. Clean the slate, and every member of Congress is being blackmailed for something.
Yeah, well, that's how they do it. Right.
Sure, they aren't all Dennis Hasterts, but they're all being blackmailed for something.
Yeah, they got something on, sure, yeah.
Now, James Traficant was not being blackmailed, but because he identified and exposed them, they got him prison, and then he got out of prison, and there he's loaded for bear. Now he looks like, aside from the fact he has a prison term, I don't think he can run for president, but he could have at one point run for president, and he is a danger to them because it's like JFK was.
Sure.
And so they can do nothing. They can't corrupt him. They can't change his mind, so they have to take him out.
Now, before we went to break, you were talking about something, and I want to get back to that.
Okay, well, we just want to talk about, we always have the pot stirring up here. I mean, there's no end to the stir of the pot because I'm running for mayor, okay, in my town.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, me running for mayor would be like a black guy going into a white supremacist meeting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's actually kind of funny, okay? Because these people hate me in this town. I mean, if they could shoot me, they probably would. They could get away with it. But anyway, what's happening is there's 7 people running for mayor, and they're putting the videos on the local cable station. And I'm making a beef about this now because they're not putting mine on, because we're doing ours independent. They banned me from cable. So Diane can put my, can give them the video and we can then put it on. But so far they haven't offered to do it. They're not going to do it unless they're forced into it. And so anyway, Diane, maybe you can, just update us with what's going on here.
Okay, I have Jim and Joe as a result of issues that are not spelled out in their policies and manuals, but were arbitrarily decided.
Lily in the chat room wrote, remember the 5 B's: bully, bribe, blackmail, banish, and bury. Diane, you were saying they have arbitrarily decided.
Yes, I believe they have because as Jim has spoken of before, his programs were largely about illegal immigration. And I know they took a lot of heat for this because this particular city is geared toward pulling in apparently any and every Brazilian that ever lived. And so they become the number one staging area into the city. And so for Jim and Joe to essentially protest that, they're going to run afoul of the political correctness up here, which is pretty thick. And so but they did start have a following of people who agreed until his 86th show, which when he started discussing in relation to Ernst Zundel, the immigration policy, and then why was a white German given such a hard time by the immigration people in this country being deported back to Canada. And so he got that all kind of squared away, as far I'm sure, in his mind when he talked to Paul Fromm this week. But the point was that once he launched into the Holocaust issue, as far as he was concerned with his illegal immigration supporters, tainted his testimony. And so been disenfranchised since then to include, as his interest and understanding of the Holocaust issue increased, so did the production of the Holocaust videos on his cable shows. And because his shows were during prime time, he was, even though they're not supposed to evaluate on the basis of content, they did. And they would micromanage and scrutinize every single little detail. Interestingly, you may recall this picture of a person who died of
Zyklon B.
Zyklon B was supposed to have been blue and black, but the pictures were pink.
They're supposed to be red, cherry red.
Right. They cherry red. That's like carbon monoxide. And so the back of this person was a female person, and you could see from part of her buttocks, which was the problem, and then her back. Well, that was construed as nudity, despite the fact, since then, I'll inject this. Do you remember that poster of the Vietnam War of this little girl of about 10 running through the street naked?
Yes.
They put
that is emblazoned in my mind.
Me too. They put that picture on prime time on the same cable type network that Jim and Joe had been on. But that was okay. So my conclusion is they came after them because of content they didn't want, and they were getting pressure from the Jews in regard to that. Until finally they were taken off, they were let back on, and they were taken off for life. And so during this time, I entered the scene, and although I didn't know anything about videoing, Jim essentially taught me, and that's a very painful process, let me tell you, of being taught how to do video. But it's very necessary and very important, and all the editing and involved. Once I saw that, I thought, man, now I'm going to be able to project my one love, my one particularly lifelong love, which is a Third Reich advocacy. And so whatever they were doing before, not to mention there's a lot more videos out now, particularly like Brother Nathaniel, there's videos against AIPAC. All of this stuff went up there. We're talking about the Jews are the scourge. Dennis Wise's New World Order, he talks about the Jews are behind all the bad things that are happening. I mean, no holds barred on any of this. So, so here comes, I have a new show. I want to insert an interview with Jim, the go-to person in New England regarding revisionism. The title of my show was The Historical Revisionist. Perfect. I'm here. here we go. We did the interview. I prepared it, sent it in. We can't have him on there because he is banned. So I appealed. I appealed through the executive director, who basically, if you'll excuse it, he's a useless tool. Most of the officious people in these positions that are self-made despots are. And so he said, you have to appeal to the board. I appealed to the board. They quickly got back to me and said, no, it's not allowed. Then I sent my letters far and wide to the Attorney General's office, ACLU, everything and anything that has a hint of possibly be concerned about free speech. And nothing. And that was about a year ago. So I said, well, if you don't let me have him on for this, if you were running for office, I was being facetious. If you're running for office, would you let me? He said, oh, yes, we'd let you do that. So, ta-da, Jim's running for office. I presented a video about his discussion concerning the campaign and his campaign and platform and all. It's only 30 minutes, and I submitted it. Nothing. I called, and I couldn't speak to the administrative assistant. She's merely a functionary. She carries out orders. So I talked to the executive director. He says that the original directive from the board stood. I had to appeal to the board, and that's where I am now. In the meantime, Joe had contacted someone in the ACLU, and it's called an intake attorney in Boston, got back with him, who he sent an email to me, and I've been in touch with her. I've now sent her this. I've sent the board of directors a letter, so she is now in the picture. And it looks like they are not going to let him, to which I said, because Jim Rizoli has differing political views, and they know it, I have to conclude they're discriminating against him and denying his right of full representation as a legitimate, though write-in, still legitimate mayoral candidate. Now that, and being female, I'm essentially like the press. They're denying me my right there. I mean, I'm pulling out all the stops on this. This is almost the last attempt to do so. In the meantime, we have a show in the neighboring town of Ashland, who this morning, you want me to say something? Well, it's in the paper.
Go ahead.
The paper said Ashland takes a stand against hate or something like that, right?
Yeah, but that's not affecting us.
No, it's just that I have a program in Ashland that now we're introducing more Holocaust stuff into it.
Right. But the point is, I have to go to another town to get my mayoral viewpoints on TV. They won't let me in my own town talk about what I feel is the problems in the town. It's very embarrassing if you ask me. But that's how these people censor. I mean, they don't want to have me on TV. But again, it's discriminatory. So they're going to have to deal with this. Hopefully, we can get the ACLU, even though I can't stand them. Hopefully, we can maybe get them to do something here. But the way this works in this town is this TV station, cable station. The election will be over before they make any decision. That's how they do things.
That's very possible. The thing is, my somewhat cautiously optimistic hope is this attorney who seems to be at least giving a nod in our direction, whether it's her attempt at affirmative actions for politically incorrect people or whatever the thing is. Maybe it's just kind of curious for her because she probably hasn't seen something like this, and now she's getting it. I sent it to the New York ACLU. And then Joe, but it was Joe that had initiated this contact with this Boston person. So we'll see on that. Now, since over the commercial, believe it or not, we turned on the TV to find out what was going on with the Boston rally. And Jim, you want to tell the update of that?
Oh yeah, we're watching, for a couple minutes just to see what's going on with the news. And the news reporter on one of the channels is videotaping all these anarchists who are fighting the cops. Okay. They're fighting the cops, a lot of blacks, okay? But anyway, whites and blacks. And the girl that was doing the piece with the video camera guy, they got attacked. They got attacked. They had to get off the air because they got attacked by the blacks. The blacks attacked them as they were doing a live stream here. Oh, boy.
The Antifa and Black Lives Matter people were attacking the police, and so they're kind of underplaying it. Oh, yeah, there's a little problem with anti-Trump, anti-police. I wonder, Trump had tweeted something or someone on staff had. There seems to be some anti-police sentiment. We hadn't seen it, so Jim turns on the TV, and all of a sudden we see they're having some issues now with who? Are they the white nationalists? Are they the Ku Klux Klan or the neo-Nazis or any of the other epithets in regard to what's going on? Oh, no. It's the Antifa and the Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Now,
Sure.
and then now the injuries that have been incurred are from a police reaction to the being attacked.
Yeah. So,
but they're not going to make a
go.
big deal about that. They're not going to say anything about that. They're going to play it down if they even mention it. We probably won't know about that here in the Chicago area, but if they do mention it, they'll play it down. And it's a shame that Black Lives Matter, that the people who are associated with that don't understand that they're being channeled, they're being used, they're being handled.
You're right. And they seem to be willing participants because they don't have, I don't think they have the IQ, if you do any of the studies on race issues and so on, that they can't wrap their mind around the fact they might be manipulated like this. In fact, I have to admit that a lot of the white people don't understand they're being manipulated too. Sure.
And I don't know that it's IQ. I think it's indoctrination, it's brainwashing, it's government schools, it's a combination of all three.
A line in Men in Black, you have truly become the kind of person we expect from government schooling. And
yes.
So that essentially, they didn't qualify, they couldn't think outside the box, they couldn't wrap their mind around the obvious. And so that's kind of what this is. Yes, it's part of the training of dumbing down, political correctness, failure to think that just maybe it might not be what it seems, little things outside the box.
Sure.
Yep.
And as far as the Holocaust denial thing, I've certainly lost friends and family and whatnot by my views on the Holocaust. And I've been called a hater and all kinds of things. But the Holocaust, the real Holocaust, happened in Germany. When you look at the word Holocaust, what it means burning.
Yep.
And it happened with with probably every city in Germany that was firebombed. And you can apply the same thing to Japan.
Right.
That was death. It was genocide by firebombing, by fire. And so we need to know history. It's absolutely essential to know history. And if they don't teach it in schools, people are not going to know about it. So please keep talking about this, even though there's a cost to it. There is a cost to telling the truth, but you have to be willing to pay that price. And the three of you are obviously very willing, and I just think all three of you are just tremendous. And I am so glad, and Jim and Joe, I know that you are glad that Diane is on your side.
Well, Diane's been a real big help now because
yes.
she's the only one that can do any production that gets on TV now. Okay?
Yes.
And so she came around just at the right time, and the fact that she picked up on how to do the video editing and all that, I mean, she's got a big presence now on TV. And I was telling her that at some point they're going to do something. There's something that's going to happen with her shows on TV because remember, she's playing all the videos that we watch, the greatest story ever told, all of the Hellstorm, all these videos she's putting on, David Irving videos, Ernest Zendel videos. She's putting them all on. I mean,
isn't that terrific?
Really
I just love that. I think
I love the irony.
It's destiny that you were that. It's just meant to be. It's just wonderful. It's just terrific.
Yeah. So and Diane, what's good about what she's doing now? She does all the typing and the sending out the letters and getting in touch with people because I hate doing that stuff. I mean, I can't stand even doing emails. But she's good at typing and getting the letters out, sending them out, mail, putting them all together, getting them looking nice if it was me. it would be pretty bad.
Well, I was going to ask you something in this regard. I was thinking, first of all, it's kind of, I guess, esoteric type of, is existential. I type, therefore I am. But, one of the things that Paul Fromm had always said in regard to various groups, how do you want to be identified? A short news clip on who we are. And maybe I'll go ahead and start off and give you some idea. Me, I'm a Christian woman, white, American, German, Swedish, French background, Irish and Dutch, a third right advocate, free speech for all, constitutional republic, anti-multiculturalism, and a Holocaust denier. How's that?
There you go.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds
I think
terrific.
we should each identify ourselves.
Indeed.
Right.
Now, Jim, you interviewed Paul Fromm yesterday. How did that go?
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, I mean, Paul, I love interviewing Paul because he can just keep talking and I don't have to say anything. I mean, he has so much knowledge and has been through so many things. I just let him, tell us his experience and what he's done, and boom, it's simple to interview him, and it was great. I mean, he talked about Ernst Zundel and all the things that happened with him for a half hour. Then we talked about Charlottesville, and we got that done pretty quick, and we can turn over videos pretty quick. So that's what's good about us. I mean, we can, we do a video like I did a video this morning. I was just sitting out having coffee on the table. I did a video. Boom, it's out in an hour on YouTube, and that's a skill set that we have that we wish we could do more with it. It's just, they're cutting us off everywhere, which way they can. I would use all that money to build a TV station that basically had all of us people, you, everybody, and you'd get paid for it. In other words, you'd come in so you can, you have money that you can live off of. And everybody would go in that station and use it. I'd have professional people that ran the thing, and that we could get our stuff on TV. That would be my, if I ever had to think about a goal or a dream, that would be it.
This is Deanna, and our guests today are Diane King and Jim and Joe Rizoli. And the websites are CC File, and File has 2 I's, ccfile.com, and jrizoli.wordpress.com, and RizoliTV.com. Sorry. I've never made a video, and I don't know how. No, I never have.
Well, it's simple.
Go ahead.
You can help.
She could do a Facebook Live.
Yeah, do you have Facebook? You can do Facebook Live. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do. Don't even have to have a camera. Use your computer, your phone. Right now, I just got an email about it said Six Flags is taking out the Confederate flag off their flagpole thing. Okay? Right. So they're taking the Confederate flag. So I just took that post, and I'm able to post it to Twitter. I'm able to post it to Facebook. I'm able to send it out to people in email in a matter of 1 minute. And it's going to be viewed by hundreds of people.
Sure.
Just in a little minute time. And so that's the whole point.
Sure.
Obama.
Yeah, I have Twitter. I've been so busy doing some other things. I'm better at writing and researching than I am at those things that we've been talking about.
Right. Well, yeah, but that's how it is. I mean, you're doing what you do best, and that's what you want to do. I mean, we do video best, so that's what we do. So everybody has their niche. Don't think it's not like you're missing anything. You're not. You're doing what you have to do. If you're good at what you do, then you continue to do it. That's all I say. The only addition here is with the video stuff is if you could do something without even needing a camera or anything like that, then that's a very good advantage because you just put it up to you and you put it on and do it. And it does it automatically. So I wouldn't worry about it. You have to understand. Look at all the people that you reach and all the things you're doing that we don't reach. You see what I'm saying? So you're taking over a field that we're not in because we can't get in it because we do video. Okay?
Sure. I guess we all have our little niche that we feel comfortable in.
Yeah, and that's good. You know, like
Yes.
I said, I'm not a writer. I hate writing. Diane loves writing. I hate writing. You know, I'm good at doing video, and that's what I do. So, you know, between the both of us, we can get a lot done.
We do stuff.
Yeah, we do stuff. But it works out pretty good.
Well, that's terrific. That is terrific. Now, we are going to be taking calls in the next hour. The websites are ccfile.com, and file has 2 I's, and jrizoli.wordpress.com, and rizolitv.com. And we do have some callers lining up. So let's take a call. Russ in Minnesota. Russ, welcome.
Yeah, I'm wondering about this, the guy that drove his car into the crowd. Immediately when that story came out, they had an interview set up with his high school teacher talking about how in high school he had been a fan of Adolf Hitler and such. And I thought, boy, that just seems almost too anyway. And then an actual, a mainstream news story I heard yesterday or the day before is that there's an organization called, it's a Republican Jewish Coalition or something like that.
Yes.
Jews for the, where they had decided that they were going to withdraw their approval of Donald Trump, and they were saying that we cannot have Nazism, we can't be doing what Trump is, not denouncing Nazism. We were blaming Trump for not being emphatic enough about denouncing Nazism. Usually on RBN you'll get immediately people saying, oh, this was some kind of a false flag. This guy was probably someone who worked for the FBI. Oh, by the way, this Republican Jewish Coalition, the primaries, the biggest donor to that organization is Sheldon Adelson. And Adelson, this was a national news story now. This is not alternative news. Sheldon Adelson was a supporter of Trump, and he's a big donor to this Republican Jewish Coalition. And so apparently it was his decision to divorce from Donald Trump over this supposed Nazi who ran his car into this group of people. I was going to say, like on RBN and the alternative media, you always get people saying, "Oh, this was a made-up story, and he was probably some FBI guy or some mind-controlled CIA guy or something that just to plant a false story." What do you guys have any opinions on that?
Oh, I can understand how that could be. All right, I mean, isn't it convenient that there's always somebody doing something that now they make a big issue about? If that guy didn't ram that car into that person and kill her, there would have been no story. I mean, really, that was a big part of this whole story. All right, so I don't trust. I mean, I don't know all the facts about that. See, I honestly, I don't really get involved in any of this stuff. I watch it, but I think that there's a lot of problems. It's fake news out there, a lot of fake news, and I don't trust how the news is coming to me. So however the media is presenting it, it's usually just the opposite of what happened. That's my opinion.
The other thing is I've heard and read that initially right after this happened, they were presenting some information, they discovered that he was a Hillary supporter.
Yeah.
So, again, that the issue is, what is the mainstream promoting, and you probably shouldn't believe it. Put it on the back burner. Benefit.
Where did you hear that he was a Hillary supporter?
Oh, it was one of the first news articles that came out right after the incident had occurred, when they were investigating who he was. Now, if they're spinning another, which I'm not prepared to believe because it's too convenient, that, he thought Hitler was great. I know a lot of people who think Hitler's great. None of us, in that same respect, would be considered Nazi by our own, because we see some things that he's accomplished. I mean, for Pete's sake, he helped create the Volkswagen. And so because I like the Volkswagen, that makes me a Nazi. So, but the thing is, the mainstream media is not going to be straight with us. And anytime they start throwing out Nazi this or Nazi that, you better take it, well, I don't know about that approach.
But I will say this about the Jews, okay? The Jews burned the candle from both ends, okay? So, yes, Adelson on one end and, who's got Soros on the other end. It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter because the Jews want to control it from both ends. And that's why they're so powerful and so dangerous. Because the money comes, it doesn't matter. The money's going to come into the far right end of it, and a lot of those are going to be Jewish-led people, and the far left of it, which are going to be Jewish-led people. It doesn't matter which ones take the lead because they're both from the same bad source.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that the story of him being a Hillary supporter, I'm a little skeptical about that. Did you hear that on the mainstream news, or did you hear? Where did you?
Absolutely not. No, because the mainstream news is suspect, first of all, because they have an agenda. Now, this came through. It wasn't even what you would call the alt media, other than anything other than mainstream news is considered that, so it can be discredited. I discredit the mainstream news, and I want to see what else is out there. I throw that out to you as a possibility because there is such a quick rush to embrace, he was an admirer of Hitler. That all of a sudden that makes sense.
But does that sound like a verifiably true story that he was a Hillary supporter? I find that very hard to believe. Don't you think that was probably just? Well, don't you think that's probably a rumor that somebody was circulating on the internet rather than an actual true story?
Probably. As opposed to him being an admirer of Hitler, I think that was the rumor.
Yes. Anytime that they can take somebody that's done something that's evil, they're going to say, "Oh, he was a neo-Nazi," or "He supported Hitler." All you have to do is make a mistake, and that's what they're going to call you.
But the Hitler story wasn't an internet rumor, though. The Hitler story was a story that came from interviewing his high school teacher, who said that
I don't believe. Let me ask you this: do you object to that? To him being a follower of Hitler?
Absolutely not. I don't object to it. No. But what I'm saying, it sounded like it's probably true, whereas the rumor about him being a Hillary supporter sounds like it's probably false.
But why is that more? I mean, he could have supported a lot of things in high school, but why would they pick that particular thing out to announce on the mainstream in the mainstream media? It just seems like they were using that to give him the reputation of being some sort of a neo-Nazi. So he did a bad thing. He was a Hitler supporter, and he did a bad thing because he was a Hitler supporter. It just was very contrived.
The whole thing about him the whole thing about this history, his high school teacher being right there. I mean, it was just minutes after he ran.
Where was he? I mean, that was very interesting.
That seemed just a little bit too strange to be true for me. It
was another one of those coincidences. It was a coincidence, Russ.
They had this guy all lined up. They just seemed to have him all lined up ahead of time with the whole story about how this kid was. And then he went on about how he spent all his time as a teacher trying to steer him away from Nazism and stuff. I just found the story to be sounded awfully contrived, like you said.
Yep.
We agree with you.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Russ. Appreciate your phone call. Take care.
Thank you. Nice call. Thank you.
Okay, my first car was a Volkswagen, so I have a tender spot in my heart. It was blue. It was my little car. I loved that car.
One question for you, Deanna. What number is your Nazi membership card?
Let me get it out of my purse is in the other room. I'll have to get it later.
Well, don't you know it? We're supposed to know what's on our license.
I've owned several Volkswagens, probably 3 or 4 of them. So
I think it's great.
There you go.
Yes. Well, we're all a bunch of Nazis. We own Volkswagens. Okay, let's take Rob in Illinois.
Hello, Deanna and guests. I heard your last caller's question about Charlottesville and the car attack and so on. And RBN perhaps will be talking about it more in the future, but it's unfortunate that there are some sufficient enough amount of people that do not have access to the internet and broaden their horizon of where they can look and get other information. But the most of the information coming together is that, once those permits were filed for Charlottesville, secret deep state, government agency, politicians, powers that be that want to create false narratives and use this to their advantage, regardless of who showed up and what, and an innocent factor for whatever may be, free speech, against hypocrisy against whites and so on. Regardless of the innocence of the people that showed up, there was a narrative being set up from the beginning. They had all this stuff set up, from the immediate state of emergency. The rally had to be begun, and they already initiated a state of emergency announcement. They already had the National Guard on call on its way. They had the state police already set up to be there. All the police were in their riot gear that they get from the military. They're all ready for all this. They set up all these barricades that pushed these two groups together. They had everything set up to shame them and throw rocks at them, and BLM, Antifa, whoever else, just all pumped up to be able to get away with whatever they can get away with, as they have done since how many events, even the inauguration of Donald Trump. They had it where these groups were all beating up on people that just want to show up, and we're getting beat up there, and it's been continuous. Anyway, coming down to the car attack, they're setting this up as to be a realization that this was entirely a false flag, as far as it was staged, set up. They've got CGI in there. They've got photoshopping. They have of course, you guys have mentioned, I think you guys mentioned on this program, the paid actors that were brought in as they hire, come on, join, have some fun, $25 an hour, join, these paid actors. And
I mentioned at the beginning of the program that it had the Soros signature on it, because he paid for all of the horrid things that happened in several instances like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's got the Soros, it's got the AIPAC, it's got the secret deep state. CIA agents were on, or FBI agents and CIA agents were on the ground. They're in these crowds. They're pumping up people. They're in there playing their roles, okay? The very first interview they had was a guy that was a political activist and part of the CIA. It was an interview that national TV did, and of course the last caller mentioned how they were immediately interviewing this guy's high school teacher. As soon as they identified who this Fields guy, supposed driver of the car, Fields was, they already had a dossier on being published all over the internet. Look at this guy. He was military, and he's, antipsychotic. I don't know what they call him. Was he schizophrenic, they called him? I'm not sure. But he's on antipsychotic drugs, and that's who they love to have the victims of. And, Deanna, you know this. You've done stories about these people being pumped through these psychotic drugs, that, these are victims. They're people that they go out to target, set up as their patsies. So there's all this stuff going on, and it's just broadened to unbelief. And of course, people that watch Fox, and the whole lying media out there is never going to know the truth, because they're not going to have access to people like Jim Fetzer or Jeff Renz or Deanna Spingola and so on, and of course the Rizolis and so on. And even, just as a side note, even Barcelona, they put us all in a state. They put out the biggest weapon they have is disinformation. And it puts us all in a state, because there's going to be a day that something actually does happen. We're not going to know what end is up, whether it's true or false, because they got so much lies out there that when you go, it's like the boy that cried wolf,
Sure.
All of a sudden he's telling the truth, and you're like, oh, yeah, right, whatever, another one. But it could be it. And
Sure.
That's how they're doing it. That's how they're playing this whole game.
Yeah, creating chaos.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For chaos, demoralization, confusing us, that brings in, transgender bathrooms and pick your own gender. They're trying to confuse us and demoralize us to the fact that, we have to question our own sanity as same as we may think we are.
Sure.
I like what you guys are doing. Keep up with the good fight. And, You know, truth is out there. Hopefully one day we can turn this pig of, I don't know what to call it, disinformation and the lies and all the tyranny it's going to put across us. Hopefully one day we can turn it around. But, you know, they got the lies and they got them hard and heavy, and, you know, using all the way back to Germany and, you know, Holocaust and of course they've done nothing wrong. It's just a burden that we bear with their lies, and combating it, they got the weapons of words, Nazi, racist, this, that. It's a very difficult thing.
Thanks, Rob. All righty. I must share this. Somebody in the chat room said that we were talking about, I said that I had a VW, and somebody said I had a VW gas fan, drove across Eastern Europe, excellent mileage. Summer of 42, if I remember right. I'm sorry. I had to share that.
Well, nobody was leaving from Eastern Europe to go back toward Western Europe. So if you're going west when everybody else is going east, that's probably a good idea.
But that was, you know, because there was the claim that the Germans, those horrible Germans, were using gas fans to get rid of the Jews. So that was really funny. It is very difficult to determine what is false and what is accurate. But Rick made a good point that you really have to look at the timing in these situations, and the fact that the high school teacher was immediately on the scene, or at least immediately available to give his viewpoints and to talk about this, certainly begs the question of how did they happen to find his high school teacher? Now, I had an email this week. Somebody, it wasn't the person who emailed me, but it was someone that he was in contact with that said that George Soros was even supporting the NSDAP, that he was a financial supporter of Hitler. And right off the top you think, well, wait a minute, wait. Let's check this out. Let's see how old this guy is. Well, he was born in 1930. He was in Hungary. He came from a Jewish family. He was in Hungary. He was a kid. 1930, born in 1930. So whenever you hear a story, check it out. Do the research.
Yeah, that's right.
Do the math, absolutely. And that goes for any story. Look up the research yourself. Don't accept other people's opinions. Not even from me. Don't accept other people's opinions, but look at the resources. Look at the footnotes. If you're reading a book, look at the footnotes. If there are no footnotes, if it sounds kind of iffy, look it up. Do your own research. Don't accept the opinions, the suppositions, the claims of other people. It's foolish. It's as foolish to accept those kinds of things, claims, speculations in the alternative media as it is in mainstream media. Because for goodness sake, don't you think that the government, if they're going to get to all of us, don't you think they're going to infiltrate the so-called alternative media? Seriously doubt it. Yes. What about compensation for the millions of people that were starved and worked to death in the gulag?
Yeah, that doesn't count.
That doesn't
Their
count.
suffering doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Yes, because we're only cattle, right?
Right.
Well, yeah, the Goy are cattle, and we're there merely for their use. So whatever the Jewish communists, Soviet communists did was okay, because that's what we are born for.
Sure. And how many more 90-year-old prison guards are they going to find that they can prosecute?
Or accountants.
Right.
I think the last one was an accountant.
Yeah.
Wow. Terrible.
Yeah, he had a lot to do with it. Yeah, he was counting the people as they were going into the gas station. Right.
Oh, that must have been it. Yeah.
Yes.
And then they came out. Yep.
Wow. Well, the story lives on. And of course, I think that we need to look at how that occurred. I love history. History is prologue. And in order to really understand how that story got started and why so many people believe it, it is really religious dogma. And it is now in the schools because that is what the law mandates. And there was a count, they attributed, they said that the number of deaths at Auschwitz, before they even tabulated anything, I think it was the day after they liberated Auschwitz, and the Russians did that, they said, 4.5 million Jews were murdered here. How could they possibly know that? The records were certainly not available to them that minute. And when the English and when the British took over some of the camps, there were more people that died after the takeover than when the Germans had jurisdiction. So, and then the stories. There were all kinds of documentaries filmed. There were people from Hollywood that were there to film the opening of the camps, to make films that were immediately put out as documentaries in the U.S. media. And then there were movies that were produced. Sophie's Choice. There were so many movies referred to as documentaries. And then you had you had all kinds of things. There were all kinds of situations. It would take a whole 3-hour program to go through how they laid that foundation so that 98% of people in America believed that the Holocaust occurred, that a Holocaust occurred, and it wasn't the one in Germany, and it wasn't the one in Japan. It happened in the camps, they say. And they had to talk about ovens to make it the burning. They had to include ovens. Well, gosh, it's just amazing.
But you are right that this really is the Holocaust is really a religious thing that started with the Jews, the Zionist Jews, because they had to have a story to get people to Palestine, and this is all part of the story. I mean, you talk about fake news. This was how they handled this and did this was really, you got to give them credit. I mean, this was a phenomenal feat. It was ingenious what they did here, and because I do a lot of reading too, like you, Diane. I got about 2 or 3 books going at a time here, but when I'm reading into it and how the Jews took this, how the Zionists took control of this right from the beginning, talking about 6 million of them, that 6 million had to die as a Holocaust, a burnt sacrifice. Okay, and it's just phenomenal because people don't get it. Everything was already laid out before anything ever happened.
They tried to promote that in World War I. There were never 6 million Jews under German jurisdiction at any one time. Never. Even the Jewish census records admit that. Right. One of our favorite Germans is on the line waiting. Okay. Go ahead and finish your statement, and then we'll take Werner.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm just saying that this was already planned out years and years in advance for this to happen and for this to be fulfilled.
Sure.
So everybody was just a pawn on the chessboard. That's all this was a chessboard that the Zionist Jews pushed every little person on that chessboard and where they wanted it to be. And it worked out perfectly.
Sure. Started with Napoleon, the Freemasons, and he promised that he was going to restore Palestine to the Jews. He said that in 1798, I believe. Okay, we got an email from Richard, and he says that he has watched many of your videos on YouTube. So, Thank you, Richard, for your email.
Just spread them around at some point in time, they're going to be taken down.
That's right. They're going to come after us.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time. It's just waiting for the right law to be passed so that they can do this.
Sure. All righty. If you want to call into the program, it's 800-313-9443. And yes, the only ethnic group who grew during World War II were the Jews. Every other group diminished. They decreased. The numbers went down. And when you look at all of the people that died, World War I, World War II,